we're gonna kind of pivot a little bit. I'm gonna bring Dr. Jones into the conversation, Dr. Gabrielle Jones. Thank you, Rachel. We're gonna be all having another little powwow conversation. But, Dr. Jones, it's just so nice to have you here today. So you are just, I mean, the way you show up for the Miles Health Foundation has just been amazing and tremendous. And you are in our inaugural board, right? So I just want to thank you for being here. And we just want to talk a little bit more on the clinical side of, of what, this event is about, what to do, right? Before you have a mental health emergency, before you have a crisis. I just love to just get a little bit of background on how you see this these issues and how people can navigate help.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Rachel, I love your voice. I appreciate it so much. Humbled to be in community with you and we locked in. So just know that. Yeah, so this event, Connected for Care, really is supposed to hone in on what minoritized communities need to know or should know when they are dealing with mental health or mental illness. And so when we're talking about BIPOC, we're talking about Black, Indigenous people of color who identify as those from those backgrounds. And a lot of times, and part of why we did the first question was a lot of times people from these backgrounds don't even consider mental health as an option. So we're starting from a deficit of knowledge and awareness when it comes to all of the resources that are available, and even just the way in which we talk about mental health or mental illness in these communities is so different from the way that society may present mental health and mental illness. And so one of the things that I talk about a lot is just manifestations of wellness and illness in BIPOC communities versus other communities. So, manifestations of wellness, that's where Black girl magic comes from. That's where Black boy joy comes from. That's where all of the laughter and the jokes and the playful nature of our communities comes from. That wellness, that laughter, that joy, that internal spiritual, you can't find it, buy it, or sell it type of joy. And when we are talking about mental illness in these communities, sometimes it looks like over exerting ourselves. Sometimes it looks like spending more time on doing things or keeping ourselves busy so that our mind is not taking us over. So having some external stimulation or external stimuli um, can be helpful because it allows us to ground ourselves and keep ourselves focused on what it is we need to do. And we also have a lot of competing responsibilities, and we have a significant mental load when it comes to what we're even thinking about and navigating day to day. So, similarly to Rachel's sharing, I have a Black son. And so, the with the situation of Nolan Wells, I have been really distracted, really, really distracted. And I cannot understate how taxing it is for something that extreme and terrible to happen for people to then start having the conversation about how do we protect our Black and brown children. That shouldn't have to happen for us to have that conversation, but that's the society that we live in right now. And that is a mental load and burden that I carry every single day. And my child is 4 years old. And I'm having to teach him at 4 years old that he can't be playful and scream in the house because if somebody calls the police and the police come and it's the wrong officer, he might shoot one of us. And that's not an exaggeration. And so I'm taking it back to even before mental health crises and really laying the foundation of mental wellness because I think when providers come into the space or when we're talking to people who maybe don't look like us or don't live like us, having to explain why I'm here in and of itself is a barrier. Having to share what it is that's causing me to seek treatment when you have no clue all of the steps that it took for me to even get to the phone call, it just that in and of itself requires being handled with care, um, and also recognize that there are safe people and there are unsafe people. So when you build community or when you're working with someone who looks different than you, asking them who their community is, who their safe people are, and that could be a really healthy, safe, and reasonable in for uh, building wellness kind of before a mental health crisis arises because you are telling them these are the people you can go to. If it's not me, if I don't feel like the safe person right now, who in your community do you feel safe with or comfortable with? Who do you spend time with? Who brings you joy? Right?
Mhm.
So having those conversations up front make the difference when it comes to people feeling like they have resources and support before a mental health crisis.
Wow. Thank you for that. I think it's when Dr. Jones was mentioning, like, people when they're stressed or things may show up differently, um, may get real busy and like do stuff. I remember in the beginning, she kept checking on me. She's like, "So, Ton, hey, I just want to see how are you really doing?" So like not the board member. She didn't know. It was like therapist, a friend, right? She was like, what's really going on, Ton? So I think she was seeing that busyness, right? And like overcompensation of trying not to stay on like what happened to our family. Like Miles was killed by the police in a mental health emergency, right? Like my son was murdered in our street right behind our house. I guess why do you think so many families delay getting help, right? Why is that such a thing in our communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are several reasons. So, broad brush, I can talk about some reasons, but obviously, individuals have their own experiences. So, this isn't by any means, and everybody is like this. And this is why people of color don't go to therapy. But often in my practice, what I've seen is, well, there's no one who looks like me, so I'm not going to go. I don't feel safe. I've been harmed. Something happened. I told somebody something, and then all of a sudden, um, here we are. The police are at my house. That happened to me in high school. I I went to we're all in the Bay Area. So I lived in Hayward and my mom had me go to school on the peninsula. And for those of you who are familiar with the peninsula, Belmont, San Carlos, those areas are very predominantly white and were when I was going to school, and people of color were bussed into my school actually. And so I had shared a traumatic experience that I had had with a a grown up at the time, um, that was not safe for my family. And so the counselor who I was speaking to essentially just went straight to, I need to call the police and I need to tell, I'm a mandated reporter. I need to share this, which I understand now, given my experience, why she did that. I think that there was a different way that she could have gone about doing it. Um, but essentially, what ended up happening was my mom started a daycare and she had a daycare for 18 years on the peninsula so that she could spend more time with me. That's why she did it. And I had shared that there was a man who was in our home who was not safe, toward me. And the counselor called the police and shared my story. And the police went to my mom's place of work, her home daycare, in the middle of the day, as well as my stepfather at the time's place of business. And it wasn't my stepfather whose job they went to. It wasn't the same man, it was a different man. But the counselor didn't ask me any information about that. Um, and my mom, who is a single parent trying to raise a child and do the best for her, has a home daycare of a lot of affluent white children, uh, has the police pull up to the house, and parents now see this and are questioning and asking. And then it blew up in my face because not only did both my stepdad, who was a safe person, and my mom, who was trying to run a business, interact with the police, but their jobs were put in jeopardy, genuine jeopardy, because of that situation. And further, it fractured my relationship with my mom because she didn't know what had happened. I hadn't told her yet. So that was another burden, and I was a teenager at the time. So actually, it took me, it's crazy to say this out loud, but it took me until graduate school to be comfortable even going to therapy myself. I did not trust the system at all. I did not think it was safe for me. I didn't know what would happen. And so I kept a lot of information to myself. And I know my story is not unique. I know there are several families and individuals who identify as BIPOC who have stories of CPS got called and they took my mom and I was in the foster system, or somebody ended up getting arrested and it wasn't the right person, or they ended up pulling my baby sister out of the home because they thought that there was something else going on, um, or they're going to take my baby away because I'm on medication that's supposed to help me with my recovery. So the reasons are endless. And I think that, as from the provider lens, we do a disservice of thinking through will, what type of impact our decision will have. And we do a very poor job of talking through it before we make the decision. And again, this is all well-meaning. Again, speaking from a provider's lens, our goal is to keep people safe. Our goal is to make sure that everyone is cared for and feels supported. But we do miss the mark, especially when it comes to BIPOC families, because we don't think through the additional implications that maybe someone from a white background wouldn't have to think about.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because, when I saw Miles like having his mental health challenges and I wasn't sure what to do. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I saw that there was, bipolar, I saw schizophrenia. But when I went to NAMI, right, National Alliance of Mental Illness, they're like, oh yeah, you should call, make sure the police know who your son is, right? Yeah, that is true for most white families, right? Because there's not as much harm or, the possibilities are, I mean, people do get killed by the police everywhere, right? But people of color are killed at a much higher rate. So I think it's important I'm glad you mentioned that because that is a huge barrier. And I think that's a lot of why, the Miles Health Foundation is focusing too on culturally responsive care, right? And making sure we have resources and